So last year marked the 30th anniversary of Capcom's Mega Man, one of the biggest video game franchises of all time. Inspired by anime classics such as Astro Boy and Casshern, he was initially created as a character sprite by Akira Kitamura, who designed him around the hardware limitations of the Nintendo. This design was then handed over to artist Keiji Inafune, who further developed the character into the classic gaming icon we know today. Spawning around 130 titles, Rockman, as it's known in Japan, is an action game featuring intense platforming and shoot-'em-up elements. It's loved by fans the world over for its tight, addicting gameplay, vibrant pixel art, and unforgettable soundtracks. The first Mega Man launched in December 1987 to critical acclaim, with many of the elements that would make up the series being correct in the initial release, thanks to the brilliant programming of Nobuyuki Matsushima. In the year 19XX, I'd asked my mum to hire Bart vs. the Space Mutants for me, and I went off to school. When I got home though, Mega Man 2 was sitting there. I asked, "What's this?" She replied, "I got that instead because I think it looks more interesting." I was pissed off. But over the course of the next 2 days, I became obsessed with Mega Man. I loved everything about it. Thanks, Mum. In those days, everyone in the schoolyard was always on about Sonic or Mario, and I was like, "Hey, what about Mega Man?" People would just stare at me until I showed them the game, and then they became obsessed too. So, for the last 30 years we've been jumping and shooting to the rocking tunes of this landmark series, and to celebrate, I'm here to talk about my favourite game in the series, Mega Man 3. What's his name again? Mega Man! Alrighty, so first off, look at the cover art for the Western release. It's pretty good. This was the first time that the character was represented correctly in the West, give or take a few liberties taken by the artist. I actually kinda like his silver arms and legs, they look cool. Mega Man 3 picks up a few months following the events of the second game. Dr. Wily claims to have reformed and is helping Dr. Light, Mega Man's creator, with his latest project, a giant peacekeeping robot named Gamma. With development nearing completion, all that's left is to gather 8 special elements from off-world mining colonies and integrate them into Gamma's powerful body. Mega Man offers to hunt them down, but even as he does so, reports begin flooding the news waves. The robots responsible for the colonies have gone berserk, and now control these harsh, unhospitable worlds. Mega Man must travel to these planets, now made death traps filled with mental robots and devoid of human habitation. After hitting the start button, you're given a choice of 8 stages to choose from, each with a crazy robot master at the end. I really love the way Mega Man's eyes dart around the screen as if to say, "Fuck this!" The earlier robot masters are often viewed as the best efforts, but I think the third game was the last time they were truly interesting. Capcom usually ran a competition allowing people to design their own robot masters and send them in with 8 lucky contestants getting their designs put into the game. Some of these competitions had upwards of 200,000 entries. My personal favourites are Snake Man, Gemini Man and Shadow Man. Given that most of these characters are fairly one-dimensional, it's Shadow Man himself that seems to have the most interesting backstory. Little is known about him, and his body seems to be made of a material not known to Earth, leading many to believe he was created elsewhere by an alien civilization. This is further compounded by the appearance of the Star Droids and Sunstar, the main antagonist from Mega Man 5 on Game Boy. The fantastic Mega Man Archie comics even create an entire backstory that fills in the gaps nicely. Running from left to right, you gotta jump and blast your way through an onslaught of crazy enemies and platforming challenges, harassed constantly by the dreaded Nest knockback and enemy respawn. Jumping is fluid and Mega Man can be maneuvered in any direction while airborne, so no committed bullshit here. Mastering his air control is essential to survival. Mega Man can fire off 3 bullets at once, but can't fire any more until at least 1 bullet has left the screen or struck an enemy, so it's important to maintain your accuracy. This means jumping and shooting become a tense balancing act, as you need to be constantly on the offensive while simultaneously avoiding enemies and attacks. This kind of intense platforming means death does come easily in these games. Look at that, a vorpal explosion of matter as Mega Man disintegrates into tiny glowing pieces. Fuck. Once you've defeated a robot master, Mega Man will gain its weapon.
Now I've got your ice power.
No, No. All of these bosses are weak to certain attacks, meaning you'll have to figure out which order to tackle them in. This open-ended gameplay was refreshing to see back in the late 80s, early 90s, adding choice and strategy to the already addicting gameplay. To start off with though, you'll need to figure out who's easily beaten with your standard shot, and I always went with Top Man, Snake Man or Magnet Man. From here I could choose to go after nearly anyone else, but would usually go straight for Shadow Man, as his weapon is extremely useful on most enemies in the game. Of course, once you get used to the mechanics, it becomes fun to take on these bosses with just your standard shot. It's up to you to decide how you want to play and how much challenge you want to experience, and that is game design at its best. The colours, resolution and pixel art are some of the best on the system. Sprites are simplistic yet bold, and the backgrounds are varied and detailed, showing off a level of polish most developers at the time would die for. There is some sprite flicker and slowdown at times, but it's kept to a minimum. The enemies in Mega Man games are always well designed and even cute at times, but they do their jobs well. Movement and collision detection are spot on. Every time you die or get hit, it's your own fault. One of the reasons I prefer Mega Man 3 over the earlier titles is the new slide mechanic. While playing the previous entry, I couldn't understand why he couldn't duck down to avoid bullets or flying enemies. Didn't Dr. Light give him any metal joints? Why is he so stiff? It was weird to me. So the third entry went and gave a much needed gameplay upgrade, allowing the player more control and leveling the playing field a little bit. With good use of the slide, you'll find that you could get out of almost any situation unscathed. A good example of this is when later on in the game you're forced to battle all of the bosses from Mega Man 2. In that game, the battle with Airman was tricky, as avoiding his whirlwinds was tough with only the jump to rely on. You battle him now though, and you can slide under them, giving you a much better chance at avoiding his attacks. It also allows the levels to be designed in interesting ways. This mechanic went on to be a mainstay for the remainder of the series on NES, the X series on SNES, the Zero series on Game Boy Advance, and onwards. There are several power-ups available throughout the game, including small and large energy capsules that help keep Mega Man's substantial health bar nice and high, weapon energy that helps keep all your Robot Master moves topped up, energy tanks that can be carried around and used when needed, and of course, the mystical extra life. Previously, in the first two games, Mega Man also acquired power-ups that helped out with platforming in hard-to-reach spots. But for the third game, Capcom went and gave him a buddy, Rush the Robot Dog. Over the course of the game, Rush will acquire several useful transformations that help you get around tricky areas, including the Rush Coil, Rush Jet, and Rush Marine. Rush's marine form is pretty cool, but its use was limited to short underwater sections, meaning he couldn't... What the fuck? The Rush Marine can jump around on land. I didn't know that. Even after all these years, I'm still finding new things out about Mega Man 3. Anyway, it was a much better idea to roll these power-ups into a cool ally for the Blue Bomber, and Rush is a welcome addition to the series. I haven't seen him in any of the art for the upcoming Mega Man 11 though, and that's kind of upsetting. Sometimes during the last few stages you'll have to ride Rush across these huge gaps, avoiding numerous enemies while his energy depletes, forcing you to pick up weapon capsules along the way. You'll have to pull off some pretty hectic shit to survive in here. It's interesting to note that Rush's functionality changed over the years, with Mega Man 3 being one of the only installments where his jet form was actually fully controllable. Later versions had him flying perpetually forward, unable to stop or turn around, with movement limited to up or down. Why? In these installments, Rush Jet became far more trouble than it was worth. While playing through the game, sometimes the action will freeze and a strange whistle can be heard, heralding the arrival of Breakman. Is this the guy responsible for the recent events? Wearing a visor and scarf, he'll attack Mega Man and retreat once defeated. Remember how he wouldn't attack you in Gemini Man's stage? I always thought it was a bit of a glitch. Anyway, Breakman is eventually revealed to be Proto Man, the prototype to Mega Man and therefore his brother of sorts. He's an interesting character, a rogue in his own right, but not out of control like the rest of the Robot Masters. What are his goals? That tune that plays upon his arrival has become iconic and I love it. I personally think Proto Man became the basis for Zero's creation at the hands of Dr. Wily in Mega Man X. What do you think? The level design in Mega Man 3 oozes quality. It offers challenging layouts that force you to use every one of your skills to their fullest. Sometimes enemy placements can be a bit unfair, probably due to the fact that the game had a somewhat troubled development cycle, which may have shortened the testing phase. The stages each have a brevity to them, and they never overstay their welcome. Platforming gimmicks are numerous and well designed, forcing you to master the skills you have learned in order to overcome them. Take Magnet Man's stage for example. It has those disappearing blocks which are a nightmare, right? They also sucked in Mega Man 2, right? Well, how about disappearing blocks with magnets that pull you off said blocks? Yeah, I know. But wait! Disappearing blocks, magnets that pull you off said blocks, into a pit? You cunt. My personal favourites are Snake Man's stage, where giant mechanical snakes make up the scenery, and also Gemini Man's stage, for its surreal, otherworld architecture. These environments truly feel alien. This game also features extra stages between the Robot Masters and Dr. Wily's castle, making it one of the longer games in the series. Having defeated all 8 Robot Masters, 4 shadowy figures appear. Guess we're fighting a question mark. Entering into one of these stages, you'll find it to be similar to the previous area, but the layouts change to be way harder. Spike pits are everywhere, and even new enemies appear. Look at this massive guy. I was amazed at what the team was able to pull off back then. This sprite's actually a background layer, and it's a neat trick that was used in a lot of old Nintendo games to create giant bosses. This is where the challenge ramps right up and gets serious. When you finally do encounter one of those strange beings, you'll notice the ghostly apparition of a Mega Man 2 boss appearing to take control of it. First time I saw that, I still hadn't made much progress in Mega Man 2, so a lot of those blokes I'd never even seen. Seeing them appear like this was creepy. These guys are hard as nails, and you'll have to defeat 2 of them in each stage, so good luck. Now if you manage to survive all that, you'll end up having a final showdown with Breakman, before moving on to one of the most difficult areas of the game, the ultimate test of your skill, Dr. Wily's castle. Look at those eyebrows. Fucking, they are huge. These stages are quite short, but they're really difficult, so that makes up for it, I guess. Eventually, after fighting a heap of new bosses, you're tasked with defeating every Robot Master in the game, all over again, one after another. Fuck. By this point, you better have saved every single energy tank you found and have all your robot weapons at full power, because you're gonna need them. As a kid, this joint took me ages. It was fucked. Oh, I've still got nightmares from it. Finally, we get to probably the most important reason why I love Mega Man 3 more than all the rest. It's because of the incredible soundtrack. Every game in the series is right up there in terms of audio excellence, but it's interesting to note that nearly every single Mega Man game out there is a different composer. Probably the reason each soundtrack has remained so fresh. Even the original Japanese names for the characters are inspired by music, rock, roll, rush, and bass. Maybe that's got something to do with it. For Mega Man 3, Capcom commissioned Harumi Fujita, usually credited as Miss Terumi, who had been involved with many other classics including Ghosts and Goblins, BIONIC Commando, and Gargoyle's Quest. Due to pregnancy, however, she was forced to leave the project after completing just 2 songs, Needle Man, Gemini Man, and parts of the staff role, all of which are pretty good. She would go on to complete many more projects, the most notable for me being Skyblazer on the Super Nintendo. Following her departure, Capcom brought in a new composer, Yasuaki Fujita, who credits himself as Bun Bun. Even though these 2 composers share the same last name, it's unclear whether they are related in some way. Anyway, this was Yasuaki's first major project in the video game industry, and mate, what a start. Every single track is amazing and full of emotional energy that gives Mega Man's planet-hopping journey substance and feeling. It's those inspiring tunes that allow you to smash through the game world, never giving up after all of those failures, finally becoming the hero that you've always wanted to be. It adds to the character of the series so well, blending darker and more mature tones that give the journey a gravity it wouldn't normally achieve. It is perhaps my favourite NES soundtrack of all time. Yasuaki would go on to work on some stellar titles such as Darkwing Duck and Breath of Fire, and even dabbled in some great Neo Geo Pocket titles. Some of the video game covers of Mega Man 3 out there are so good that I can't handle it anymore and something must be done. Girl, you gotta go get your, where's your rope? Go get your rope.